Tonight, you don't need to think. You don't need to try. Just rest. As you fall asleep, your mind becomes naturally open, calm, receptive, and focused. This story was designed to guide your subconscious toward clarity, confidence, and wealth while your body rests. There's nothing you need to do, just listen and sleep. There was a quiet reluctance in Elisa each evening, just before she closed her eyes. It was not quite fear nor worry, though at times both brushed against her thoughts in half-light. It was a question, persistent and soft, echoing within. Why did she always return to familiar patterns regardless of her brightest intentions? In her days, she typed with practiced certainty at her desk, exchanged courteous pleasantries with colleagues, and ticked boxes that months ago she had drawn for herself as mile markers on the road to something better. Yet, each dawn seemed to bring her back, gently but firmly, to the precise thresholds she thought she'd left behind the night before. Outwardly, her world appeared settled. She had crafted a careful balance in conversations and routines, projecting calm to others and even to herself if she happened to catch her reflection. But as hours trailed into dusk, Elisa felt a silent undercurrent within her, an undertow of doubt so subtle it shaped everything. It wasn't just the old advice swirling in memory, spoken by friends and family. Believe in yourself, push forward, envision success. She had tried all that, yet found herself circling familiar ground. Last month, a late-night scroll through unfamiliar channels led her to a curiosity. Tales of invisible learning whispered to the sleeping mind, secrets of quiet transformation that could rewrite old stories from the deep. She had nearly forgotten it the next morning, but the seed of intrigue was planted. That evening, Elisa found herself watching an old documentary about a mountain climber who, despite years of methodical failure, rose to legendary status not by striving harder, but by altering the invisible dialogue he carried into sleep. She bristled at the simplicity of it. Could the mind really be led to certainty and confidence without relentless conscious effort? That was the puzzle she couldn't shake. As city lights flickered in distant windows, she wondered how many people crafted facades of composure and hope, only to be stilled by unseen habits rooted deeper than their waking thoughts. Across the city, Manuel's rituals echoed a similar dance. He was admired for his calm, his steadiness in the face of uncertainty. Clients, friends, even strangers trusted his guidance, puzzled at his unshakable ease. Only a select few knew that behind the closed door of his study, as the clock ticked past midnight, Manuel sat quietly, hands folded, consciously offering his mind simple, quiet phrases about abundance and stability. He never forced belief. Instead, he repeated these gentle suggestions until they blurred with the night's hush, weaving through the spaces just before sleep. Manuel's friends often questioned his secret, but he only smiled, shrugging as if certainty had always been a part of his nature. Even he sometimes wondered, was it really his choice, this newfound peace, or the result of a silent apprenticeship unfolding each night? In a smaller flat, Julia tossed and turned, her mind brimming with to-do lists and fragments of anxious hope. She longed not for riches of gold, but for the richness of quiet assurance. Nights became battlegrounds of logic and feeling, what to trust, what to let go. Yet even as she wrestled with uncertainty, a small part of her suspected that the true lessons she needed were never learned by day, but by simply allowing a new gentleness to seep in during sleep, without resistance or expectation. As these three lives spun beneath the pale moon, none of them guessed their silent struggles formed the very pulse of their days. There was something in the darkness that watched over them, not as an adversary, but as an ancient teacher. The patterns they lived by, the ones that quietly shaped each word, each gesture and choice, seemed, on the surface, immovable. But somewhere in the stillness between heartbeats and dreams, those patterns traced old stories, loops of scarcity and expectation, as if waiting for a new script whispered by a source more patient than thought. Tonight, something would shift. As the clock ticked closer to the hour when even the city's most restless streets surrendered to hush, the invitation was simple: to surrender not to silence or emptiness, but to a story designed for minds that were ready, finally, to listen. The temptation lay not in grand declarations or forced resolve, but in the gentle repetition of calm, safe, confident images gently offered to the sleeping self. A rare promise shimmered in that invitation. Whoever lingered in this quiet space, letting each word settle, might wake subtly transformed, not with memories of lessons learned, but with new inclinations guiding their footsteps, as if the seeds of prosperity and trust had always been there, waiting to bloom. The question lingered in the night, just out of reach. What if real change did not require struggle, but only a willingness to allow quiet certainty to slip in and make a home in the shadows of sleep? For Elisa, for Manuel, for Julia, and perhaps for anyone listening, the journey started not with effort, but by surrendering wakefulness to a story, letting a new rhythm of thought unfold beneath the surface. This was not merely a bedtime tale, but a gentle experiment in becoming someone new, one quiet night at a time. And as eyelids grew heavier and breaths grew slow, the promise remained. Only by staying until the end of this softly woven story would anyone discover what their own mind could become in the comforting dark. A gentle hush stretched across the city as Elisa remained perched at her window, the quiet outside echoing her interior solitude. While other apartments flickered with distant laughter or the glow of muted screens, she traced the outline of her coffee mug, cool against her palms. Her thoughts wandered unexpectedly to a friend's painting, a landscape unfinished, which seemed, somehow, less about what it depicted and more about what was left unsaid, what might emerge if the brush lingered a bit longer. Her gaze wandered, not outwards, but inwards, touching territories seldom visited during daylight. Meanwhile, in an apartment enveloped by old books and faint citrus from simmering tea, Manuel thumbed through a slender journal, each page brimming with ambitions scribbled in looping script. He paused, reflecting on advice he'd received from a mentor, a subtle nudge to let expectations breathe rather than shutting them into neatly labeled boxes. Tonight, something within urged him to view his intentions not as rigid objectives, but as invitations to welcome what might flourish in surprising forms. As the air in her room grew comfortably still, Julia tried to decipher the mosaic on her ceiling, a whimsical arrangement of shadows shaped by light slanting between blinds. Her mind wandered to a memory, a childhood moment, when her father taught her how tiny seeds, given quiet nurture and a gentle hand, erupted into bursts of greenery overnight. That lesson remained dormant, yet now it pulsed with new significance. Could inner strength be cultivated in quietude, without the fierce sun of scrutiny? Without exchanging words, the trio ventured along unusual mental pathways. Elisa, alert to minuscule shifts in her breath, considered a possibility she'd rarely entertained. What if the source of calm and self-assurance didn't demand relentless logic, but thrived in images painted softly at the edge of awareness? In this state, external metrics like bank balances and approval ratings faded, nudging her to imagine instead a life colored by satisfaction and composure. She traced future scenes, not built on precise plans, but on a tapestry threaded with trust. For Manuel, a different scene arose, a walk along an unfamiliar path in the early haze of dawn. Trees arched overhead, forming a kind of passageway he hadn't noticed before. As his footsteps crunched quietly over gravel, he felt less guided by calculation and more by an unnamable sense of certainty. He realized that, at moments like these, new references for fulfillment emerged through subtly sensed permission, as if his aspirations adjusted to the rhythm of a well-tuned instrument. Rather than grasping tightly to a single outcome, he let images of ease, resourcefulness, and warmth accompany him, like silent companions on the road. Julia, now curled into a soft blanket, allowed her thoughts to float gently, with no need to steer. Images arrived, Open doors, sunlight pouring into hidden corners, conversations in which her voice resonated with quiet authority. Oddly, these mental snapshots were not forced or selected. Instead, they played out naturally, offering a rehearsal for success that bypassed her usual doubts. Each imagined scene left the possibility that tomorrow might unfold differently, a series of micro-choices influenced not by yesterday's worries, but by this evening's quiet rehearsal. Moving through these inner landscapes, each character became attuned to the subtle shift when hope ceases to be wishful thinking and transforms into an unspoken promise. There is no need to force remembrance, nor to crave immediate confirmation. Instead, the lesson took root, like layers of earth compressing over centuries to yield gemstones. Tranquil repetition plants conditions for new responses, forming invisible habits ready to influence any crossroad. This subtle artistry is not unlike the process by which a composer draws together scattered, unfinished melodies into an unexpected harmony. The outcome feels both utterly new and strangely inevitable. Here lies an invitation. When considering how one approaches quiet moments of transition, those short spans where uncertainty threatens to take hold, might it be worthwhile to listen for the faintest gestures of self-belief that emerge? How different could the day appear if guided by these silent certainties, shaped not by past patterns, but by the refreshing hush that precedes genuine change? As the gentle dark expanded, each of them yielded to this nightly practice, welcoming fresh perspectives, surrendering control just enough to allow the mind to gently knit together impressions of stillness, optimism, and promise. With every passing hour, they ventured closer to a version of themselves both familiar and quietly transformed, guided by invisible lessons absorbed in the softest folds of awareness. In a softly lit room, Elisa lingered beside an old wooden dresser, her fingertips grazing a collection of tiny, mismatched mementos. Each one, the faded train ticket, a smooth pebble, the gleaming coin, carried its own quiet memory, yet together they stood as silent reminders of hope, resilience, and the unpredictable turns life can take. While she arranged them, a gentle current of realization stirred within her. Certain influences operate far beneath the loud churn of conscious rumination, shaping one's sense of what is possible without demand for attention or acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Manuel, eyes settling on the reflection of steam swirling from his untouched mug, mused over stories passed down from relatives who navigated hardship with more steadiness than bravado. He recognized a curious pattern. Whenever they described outcomes shifting in their favor, they mentioned neither luck nor exhaustion. Instead, their words, while casual, often hinted at an unhurried certainty that eventually things aligned just as they quietly expected. Even their smallest routines, watering plants before sunrise, methodically folding linens, or pausing to admire a well-baked loaf, embodied a kind of faith that each action sent subtle invitations to stability and abundance. An altogether different scene unfolded as Julia sat cross-legged near her open balcony, the distant hum of traffic an almost meditative backdrop. She closed her eyes, not to escape the moment, but to observe how stray sensations traveled through her. Cool air brushing her skin, the tickle of a loose thread along her wrist, the faint aroma of baked bread from a neighbor's kitchen. These sensations, minute and fleeting, framed her awareness of how the environment, rich in details, seeped into her mood and expectations without fanfare. Awareness, she realized, did not arise solely from grand gestures, but from the interwoven rhythms anchoring her to the quiet pulse of her environment. In these distinct yet interconnected vignettes, a fresh dimension emerged, the capacity for calm and confidence to embed itself through gentle, repeated exposure to supportive cues, rather than fixed proclamations or defiant gestures. Rather than wresting change from the world by force, the three gradually noticed a subtler path. By thoughtfully engaging with environments and objects imbued with serenity and assurance, They found themselves ushered into mindsets that made room for prosperity and security to grow almost effortlessly. Now, imagine, after a taxing afternoon, Elisa entered her space craving ease, not through distraction, but by taking a deliberate moment to notice the interplay of light dappling the rug or the mild comfort offered by her favorite chair. These weren't mere decorations or conveniences, but steady anchors helping her settle into a mindset receptive to possibility. With every small appreciation, she sent a quiet message to herself that life could be soft, ample, and reliable, starting from simple acts of mindful noticing. Simultaneously, Manuel spent an overcast morning at his local market, drawn to the ritual of picking ripe fruit and exchanging pleasantries with familiar vendors. The regularity of these encounters grounded him. He didn't analyze each interaction, nor did he attach them to a broader ambition. Instead, the habit of accepting small, steady joys supported a latent expectation that satisfaction would meet him often and never require drama or debate. Over time, the pleasure he absorbed from these little sequences of normality solidified into a framework through which greater achievements registered less as distant dreams and more as logical outcomes. As for Julia, one rainy day, she invited a close friend for coffee, simply to share silence and warmth. No agenda pressed for resolution. They lingered over their drinks, occasionally trading gentle observations about the weather and hinting hopes for the future. The ease with which they held space for each other underscored a revelation. Genuine connection and mutual trust, though subtle, could recalibrate one's idea of what is attainable, planting confidence with far more enduring roots than solo effort ever could. With every passing hour, these experiences, unique in their simplicity, knit together new models of resilience and calm. They realized, sometimes softly, sometimes with surprise, that gentle repetition of these small, affirmative cues functioned like hidden scaffolding beneath their daily choices. As each day slipped quietly into the next, these patterns collected, sending ripples through habits, gradually replacing old scripts with bolder, more constructive ones. No grand announcement needed. Only the comfort of knowing a richer internal landscape was quietly unfolding, ready to greet them with every new dawn. As dusk crept gently toward midnight, Elisa found herself drawn to her grandmother's antique chest, a relic rarely opened since childhood. Dust motes shifted in the golden lamplight as she unlatched it, revealing not only old linen and fragments of lace, but a bundle of tiny letters, their paper thin and fragrant with age. Unfolding the first envelope with trembling fingers, she lingered over words written in an elegant, looping script, messages from another era, dense with stories of perseverance, hope, and unwavering belief in fortunate outcomes. These handwritten confessions resonated differently than the digital affirmations she'd skimmed casually online. Tangible and enduring, the letters held an energy that her logical mind could not dissect. An unexpected tranquility anchored itself within her as she held these artifacts, as though their certainty in future prosperity had seeped invisibly into her bloodstream. Simultaneously, on the other side of town, Manuel navigated a labyrinthine antique market with casual curiosity. Wandering alone among brass trinkets and cracked porcelain, he paused before a vendor whose voice was low and deliberate. "People forget," the man murmured, "that value is often decided by silent recognition, not loud declaration." That remark lingered for Manuel far more powerfully than the objects themselves. As he explored further, a modest painting, its frame chipped, its canvas muted, caught his attention. Although dismissed by most shoppers, the scene depicted within suggested an abundance of unmapped possibilities. A winding footpath bordered by wildflowers, sunlight flickering along its edge. As Manuel gazed at it, he felt an unfamiliar sense of faith arise, as though the obscure path in the artwork hinted at doorways invisible until approached with trust and patience. Elsewhere, Julia attended a seminar on soundscapes and their effect on mood, hosted in a conservatory filled with exotic plants. The presenter, an ethnomusicologist, played recordings from rainforests, bustling Mediterranean markets, and distant mountain temples. It surprised Julia how quickly certain sound sequences laid the groundwork for fresh expectations. Gentle repetitions in the melodies lulled attendees into an atmosphere of rich contentment and hope. It was not merely background noise. These harmonies operated as a catalyst, nudging everyone present toward heightened relaxation and unconsciously suggesting opportunities would appear in seemingly random rhythms. Julia exchanged glances with a neighbor, both sensing that these intangible layers of influence carried as much impact as any conscious goal-setting routine. Later, as the seminar let out and the streets glistened with recent rain, Julia replayed these mysteries in her mind. How could a fleeting auditory pattern, a nearly forgotten letter, or a hidden painting seed confidence so quietly? She remembered the presenter's words: sound, scent, memory. All these slip past resistance. They invite us into new chapters before we even realize a page has turned. Around her, traffic light reflections shimmered, suggesting infinite routes at every intersection. Meanwhile, Elisa, now curled in her reading nook, found her demeanor subtly altered. Discarding worries as though shedding layers of heavy clothing, she turned those fragile letters into talismans, propping them by her pillow as small reminders that a history of quiet optimism had always existed, waiting only to be noticed. Manuel, resting on a park bench as dusk offered up a gentle breeze, watched the canvas he'd purchased sway slightly in his cloth tote. He realized what the vendor meant. Value, and the quiet expectancy it nurtures, doesn't need to be taught directly to the conscious mind. Indeed, as these new influences mingled in their lives, each of them noticed a shift as natural as spring buds unfurling, delicate, nearly imperceptible changes in trust and composure, fostered by relics of the past, chance encounters, and subtle harmonies. Can the smallest exposure to unexpected sources truly mold inner outlook? Does a single, overlooked object, or a fleeting tone drifting outdoors subtly reroute the course of someone's intentions for the better? If so, who's to say what magnificent possibilities might germinate overnight, waiting patiently, as all silent apprentices do, for their hour to awaken and shape the days ahead? As the night's hush settled and distant streets lulled into a quiet rhythm, a different question stirred for Elisa while she placed a carefully chosen flower into a narrow jar. For the first time, she wondered, what if prosperity was less like a prize to be claimed and more like a language to be learned? This thought didn't arise from past routines or family wisdom, but from watching a cat, the neighbors, she presumed, boldly weaving through their building's courtyard, seeking warmth. The animal moved not as if it deserved comfort, yet neither did it apologize for seeking it. That feline certainty sparked a fleeting envy, an urge to understand how expectation and ease might entwine so effortlessly in any living being. Moving back indoors, Elisa noticed the interplay of quiet and shadow, the subtle ways her space morphed around her presence. She set her hand on a chair's back, pausing to sense how the furniture, worn smooth by years of daily use, no longer resembled its sharp and formal past. The passage of countless calm evenings had reshaped its surface, a gentle erosion that gave way to comfort. From this, she glimpsed the possibility that mental patterns might also soften without direct confrontation, gradually, patiently, as time coats anxiety in a numbing gloss. The logic eluded her but hinted that habitual reassurance, quietly accumulated, would outlast any sudden declaration of intent. At a rooftop cafe across town, Manuel observed a trio playing chess in near silence, pieces gliding between squares with measured intent. It fascinated him how anticipation, embedded deep in each competitor, seemed to shape not just moves, but the very air over the board. A subtle lesson emerged. New forms of stability signal themselves not only through grand achievements, but in the way small expectations alter the tenor of ordinary encounters. These shifts often arrive unheralded, like the gentle change in wind that adjusts a sail's course barely enough for an experienced sailor to notice. Yet certainty builds, woven into the game's flow, wordless but decisive. As rain streaked the panes of a studio, Julia dipped a brush into aquamarine, carefully layering pigment onto raw canvas. She didn't paint to capture landscapes, but to experiment with how color intensity transformed with slow repetition. Each stroke deepened the presence of blue, yet she realized that confidence arrived not in the composition's completion, but in the act of letting shades overlay and mingle. From these experiments, she gathered that inner assurance might resemble watercolor seeping into paper, dispersing quietly at first, then unexpectedly defining the entire scene. This process brought to mind her own tendency to expect the familiar, but now, she sensed the value in nurturing expectancy by gently revisiting new possibilities, granting them time to settle before judging their permanence. From these moments arose an imperative. Adaptation need not be loud or heroic, but could unfold in subtleties. Through the gradual warming of space, the evolving resonance in wordless games, the deepening color that patience alone could unlock. Elisa, sipping herbal tea, reflected on how narratives of lack and hesitation had, until now, played endlessly in the background, unchallenged simply because they slipped in with so little fanfare. Now, she questioned, how might someone quietly replace outdated scripts with fresh ones, just as a room adapts to gentle, persistent changes in light? In the quiet, that cat returned and curled up nearby, underscoring, without proclamation, that comfort, belief, and stability often arrive not as singular events, but as companions to those who welcome them, even while sleep and shadow intertwine. As midnight gently rolled forward, silence became the backdrop for these realizations. Chessmen glided, aquamarine sank deeper, a cat purred without fear, and minds tuned themselves to subtler references. If, in the darkness, something essential shifted, unannounced but irrevocable, might this be how inner certainty is sculpted? The room, the game board, the studio canvas, each space held its own slow bloom, whispering in quiet harmony that night's lessons sometimes sculpt a new version of self, one habit, one expectation, one silent hour at a time. Emilia, accustomed to orchestrating every detail of her life, sensed a restless energy emerging as she wandered through the city's botanical gardens on a drizzly afternoon. Raindrops clung to glossy leaves, magnifying emerald shades. While she typically relied on catalogs and to-do lists, today's unpredictable weather forced her into a slow-paced walk. Something about the garden's winding paths, the way rivulets formed new routes across the gravel, prompted her to question patterns in her own inner world. While observing a gardener carefully staking up a drooping blossom, Emilia pondered whether her own sense of security depended on precisely planned reactions, or if she could, just this once, experiment with yielding to circumstance. Could she discover a foundation of stability that didn't require relentless vigilance? Meanwhile, across a small square, Tim was sitting on the damp wooden steps at the entrance to a closed gallery, humming absently as pedestrians hurried past under shared umbrellas. The scent of wet paint lingered from an earlier exhibition, reminding him of late evenings spent mixing colors in solitude. He reflected on how anticipation often takes the form of nervous energy, ready to pounce at the first hint of uncertainty. A passing child splashed through a puddle, laughter echoing off the stone facade. Tim allowed himself a brief chuckle, recognizing a rare openness, a willingness to be surprised by delight. As the laughter faded into the distance, he found his own posture shifting, shoulders uncoiled, breathing slower, doubts quieter. In that moment, he realized he could cultivate a sense of assurance not by tightening his grip on future outcomes, but by meeting small interruptions, even disruptions, with attentive calm. At the edge of a bustling marketplace, Selena paused in front of a bakery window, the warm glow of lamplight catching fragments of her reflection. Within the glass, the swirl of cinnamon rolls and the bustle of early evening customers formed a tableau both comforting and fleeting. For Selena, waiting was often a source of latent anxiety, as if each pause in life's script demanded she fill it with immediate answers. Yet tonight she hesitated before entering, captivated by the slow choreography inside. Customers exchanged banter with the baker, glazed pastries were handed across the counter with unhurried care, and a pair of strangers shared a quiet nod before heading out into the drizzle. It struck her. Each person shaped their part of this moment not by forcing an agenda, but by trusting the rhythm of events to unfold, anchored in an underlying faith that their needs would be met, if not instantly, then in a manner both timely and kind. Momentum gathered in the city as darkness pooled around street lamps. Yet these three, Emilia, Tin, and Selena, held back from rushing home, letting themselves sink into subtler rhythms. There was an unspoken experiment underway. Each chose to resist the temptation to anticipate disaster or micromanage possibility. As Emilia watched the gardener, Tin listened to puddles being navigated, and Selena inhaled the bakery's warmth from a step away. They practiced a form of silent dialogue with uncertainty itself. No affirmations, no mantras, just an allowing of stillness to guide interpretation and reaction. Now, consider how this applies when circumstances nudge you sideways. Missed trains, startling news, plans upended. What would change if, instead of defaulting to urgency, one allowed an undercurrent of composure to frame their next move? Observing Emilia's softened vigilance, Tin's transformed anticipation, and Selena's receptive presence reveals how implicit trust, earned through exposure to unexpected intervals, becomes a pattern, not a performance. Subtle choices accumulate. Over time, even fleeting acts of openness shed accumulated armor and make everyday living fertile ground for growth. Eventually, these encounters ripple forward. Emilia's deliberate patience leads her to resolve conflicts with greater generosity. Tin, inspired by a memory of laughter, approaches new endeavors with curiosity uncluttered by dread. Selena, returning to that bakery the next week, enters without hesitation, trusting both her timing and the kindness of routine strangers. Each witnesses, in their own way, that unwavering calm is cultivated not simply in preparation or repetition, but in the willingness to find equilibrium amidst life's gentle disruptions and sweet surprises. Rain had long ceased by the time Alejo made his way along a narrow avenue where the lingering scent of petrichor still clung stubbornly to cobblestones. Without his usual sense of urgency, he wandered, drawn instinctively by stray lights filtering between the canopies of late-blooming trees. A soft ripple of laughter from a lantern-lit terrace momentarily snagged his attention, prompting a flicker of nostalgia that quickly faded beneath an insistent curiosity. Something elusive seemed to pulse beneath ordinary interactions, a kind of resonance that defied logical explanation, yet felt urgently real. Meanwhile, Nora perused the maze of a second-hand bookshop, hands trailing along battered spines until she stumbled upon a slim volume with no title. Gingerly opening it, she discovered its pages filled with unfamiliar constellations, lines, and dots mapping journeys both ancient and imagined. This peculiar discovery drew her deeper not for what was readily decipherable, but because these configurations awakened a sense of alignment she couldn't articulate. As she traced the pathways, Nora sensed her mood subtly recalibrate, as though her thoughts themselves adopted the patient, spiraling motion of those cosmic diagrams. It was a feeling less about understanding and more about absorbing a pattern of coherence that grew clearer only in retrospect. Elsewhere, Marco leaned on a balcony rail, gazing out at a patchwork of windows flickering warmly within their own rhythms. He realized that each illuminated square might well contain entire worlds, each governed by unique priorities and silent agreements. From this vantage point, Marco felt simultaneously insignificant and completely connected, as though his presence was woven into a much larger, invisible fabric. Such moments, rare though they were, signaled a subtle recalibration of self, identity no longer fixed by solitary striving, but expanding slowly in response to myriad signals from his environment. Sometimes the tone in a stranger's voice, at others the rhythm of footsteps echoing from distant corridors. Advancing further, it became apparent that unseen influences disguised themselves as coincidences or idle amusements. On her walk, Paula paused by a community mural alive with color. She watched a group of children imitating the outstretched arms of painted figures, their laughter spilling over the pavement. Their mimicry was whimsical, but in this act of play, Paula recognized an important mechanism. Behavior often echoes what is seen repeatedly, and over time, these mimic gestures solidify into lasting inclinations. This reflection sent a soft shiver down her spine, a realization that much of what felt intrinsic was once only borrowed until it became her own. Continuing, Luca's story unfolded during a late tram ride. As the vehicle hummed between empty stations, he watched his own reflection blurred in the window, shifting with each turn. Shadows slipped over his features, dissolving old traces of self-doubt. Here, away from everyday expectations, the rhythmic tremor of the journey introduced a new steadiness. It was not the scenery or conversation guiding him, but an unfamiliar ease that quietly pressed him toward optimism. The cadence of the ride reshaped the tempo of his thoughts, instilling a calm certainty that was neither willed nor wholly understood. Now, reflect on how these seemingly disparate events illustrate a truth often overlooked. Conditions that favor assurance and prosperity might arise most powerfully from peripheral, almost accidental exposures. Are there moments, unplanned encounters, random discoveries, that gently foster greater openness or composure within your experience? This is not the result of meticulous planning, nor is it born from willpower alone. Instead, it is the accumulation of subtle influences, each adding dimension to the next, like layers of watercolor progressively revealing a picture that cannot be rushed. Consider how, tonight or tomorrow, you might allow one of these unnoticed currents to nudge you gently toward a state of deeper, quieter confidence. A subtle charge lingered in the soaked air as dawn seeped its pallor between high rises. Between blinking traffic lights, Tamara stepped onto rain-glistened pavement, shoes splashing through neglected puddles. The morning did not greet her with fanfare. Instead, she moved as if answering a silent summons, a need to find solace within unpredictability's embrace, not in avoiding it. She slowed at a small intersection, drawn by the aroma wafting from a bakery's side door. The baker, sleeves dusted in flour, paused to glance up, catching her eye for the briefest moment. No words passed between them, yet something exchanged, a mutual acknowledgement of lives moving beside each other, bound by shared anticipation for what newness the day might yield. Holding her coffee, Tamara noticed how minor interruptions, a scooter zipping close, a staccato burst from a distant radio, failed to unnerve her. Instead, these unexpected sounds played like punctuation in her gentle awakening. She realized that adaptation sometimes blooms not from self-imposed calm, but from allowing circumstances to imprint their rhythm upon her morning routines. This willingness did not erase ambition or hope, but redirected them, channeling her attention away from rehearsed scripts and toward spontaneous invitations for growth. Meanwhile, at the opposite end of a long corridor lined with foggy windows, an elderly man named Annibal silently polished antique brass handles, the metal warming beneath his diligent hands. Decades spent restoring objects others dismissed as obsolete had fostered in him a temperament neither rigid nor resigned. He'd grown accustomed to appreciating imperfection, noticing how, over time, worn surfaces acquired new meaning. A small imperfection in one handle, overlooked by passers-by, captured light in a peculiar way each morning, subtle, fleeting, almost unnoticeable, yet quietly dignifying the entire threshold. Annibal's satisfaction was born from his capacity to recognize value emerging where others saw only flaws. In these moments, resilience transformed from a concept into a living practice. Rather than expelling uncertainty, he folded it into his craft, relying on faith that the accumulation of these modest acts would open pathways to stability. Not far away, within a softly humming greenhouse, Lucia surveyed slender saplings trembling faintly as sunlight filtered through glass. Perhaps most striking was her way of listening, not for what was familiar, but for new notes embedded within the habitual soundscape. A gardener's gentle hum, the almost imperceptible click of misting pipes, even the barely audible sigh as a leaf fell. Each detail revealed opportunity. Lucia believed that innovation often arrived disguised as an unremarkable tweak in ordinary circumstances. She noted how a certain plant, having received less light for days, adjusted its angles to capture stray illumination near the floor, stretching resourcefulness into a quiet blueprint for thriving. In turn, Lucia mirrored that persistence in her own work, trusting adaptation as a mode of silent progress. No grand revelation struck her. Instead, she felt a growing trust in her ability to accommodate change without fearing it would undermine her sense of security. Now, consider the effect when unforeseen elements nudge the edges of established comfort, when a familiar journey falters, or when a routine task turns momentarily irregular. At such junctions, do you recoil, or can you, like Tamara, Annibal, and Lucia, experiment with letting go of your grip on predictability? The question is not how to rid yourself of surprise, but how to recognize its soft offer, a space to cultivate sturdier confidence and poise, shaped by the acceptance of minor chaos. Gradually, you might notice that as spontaneous adjustments weave themselves into daily rituals, a new variety of strength blossoms, one that welcomes change not as a threat, but as an unpredictable muse, inviting you to dance in step with its shifting melody. Reflecting on this journey so far, it is as if those woven experiences, subtle yet transformative, have composed a tapestry, each thread spun from the quiet persistence of daily moments that stretch and flex, adapting to the invisible movements beneath the surface. As dusk gives way to the softer velvet of late hours, the rhythm of existence becomes less about direct control and more about the art of accommodation, the gentle acceptance that sometimes change whispers its arrival while one is wrapped in a hush of habit or stillness. Those who move through such moments, like dancers guided by a melody felt in the bones rather than heard in the air, become attuned to a deeper alignment. Their steps are not hesitant, nor are they rigid. Arms extend, fingers uncurl, and the gentle pivot that follows reveals a new orientation, to possibility, to opportunity, to ease. Within this evolving landscape, a ripple effect quietly courses beneath initial perceptions. Old hesitations occasionally resurface, flickering at the peripheries, but are softened by an emerging sense of belonging to a broader current. Images arise of a small sailboat tracing new arcs upon restless water, not fighting the tide, but discovering propulsion in the wind's subtle invitation. In this manner, individuals, those whose cravings for certainty once made each decision feel like a tightrope, begin to recognize a foundation shaping itself organically. No longer does safety depend on fixed routines or familiar narratives. Instead, assurance gently seeps through the cracks, filling new vessels with silent promise. One could imagine, in these interludes, how anticipation itself slowly takes on another form. Where apprehension's shadow may have loomed in silence, now there is the suggestion of a quiet observer within, an internal witness absorbing each pattern, registering shifts no calendar could predict. This awareness is not inert. It pulses with a quiet warmth, reminiscent of the way a hearth can gather a household as dusk deepens, or how a garden under patient stewardship blooms even when no one is watching. No sudden revelation prompts this shift. Still, there is a gravitational pull, a subtle beckoning towards a space where peace and self-assurance coalesce and expand. As time flows onward, these evolving nuances become almost tangible, settling into a kind of muscle memory. At first glance, the changes may seem as invisible as mist rising from warm ground at dawn, but soon, new contours reveal themselves, a softened jawline, a more measured breath, an outlook colored by hope that does not require proof. Conversations, both inward and shared, are shaded by a different hue. A lightness infiltrates even mundane exchanges, too quiet at first to notice before clarity sharpens. A soft resilience emerges, resilient in an unassuming way, unmarked by show or spectacle. There is a sense that whatever each new hour might deliver, an unhurried composure is quietly pooling within, refilling reserves once depleted by struggle. Guided by these moments of grace, each character in this unfolding narrative inches closer to the unspoken center, the heart of what it means to trust a process that operates just outside conscious grasp. The intricate dance between intention and acceptance, between a mind's steady inquiry and a heart's wordless trust, transmits a feeling of anticipation suspended, poised on the threshold of a final discovery. And so, as the story's cadence draws from shadow toward approaching light, the listener is invited to pause, suspended in this liminal space where the cumulative effect of all these silent lessons waits to be revealed. Evenings seemed to stretch differently now for Elisa. She moved among familiar things as if noticing them anew. A lamp's glow spill onto hardwood, the low hum of distant conversation, the rhythm of her own measured breathing. It was not so much that she'd learned anything as dramatic as a secret code, but something subtler, the understanding that she could allow her surroundings, her routines, and her emotions to shape each other with patience instead of pressure. In these unhurried moments, a book set aside, a stray smile exchanged over a balcony rail, she caught glimpses of a wellspring she had often overlooked. It wasn't grandeur she sensed, but the kind of assurance built quietly behind the scenes by countless evenings spent letting hope quietly accumulate, even while she slept. In his own serene space, Manuel now folded his favorite sweater with an ease that would have surprised his former self. His mind no longer chased outcomes or judged himself by the day's tallies. Instead, a softness settled within his approach to each small ritual. Placing his sweater on the shelf, he felt a kinship with those invisible, wordless lessons that seemed to unfold beyond conscious intent. Confidence born in shadowy corners, optimism seated in repeated gestures. These influences stuck with him, guiding his decisions when he least expected. Prosperity, he saw, took root where kindness to oneself was given more airtime than doubt. Julia, surrounded by notebooks adorned with scribbled dreams, recognized a shift she could not chart on any calendar. She answered new opportunities with a steadier voice, not because her circumstances had changed, but because the landscape of her thinking had grown lush with the habit of expecting gentle progress. Patterns taught by time. The way she met pauses, welcomed surprises, and responded to setbacks, felt as though they grew from an instinct she trusted, one that had learned tranquility could be practiced as surely as any skill. Each night, something beneath her awareness absorbed heaviness and recast it as security, quietly engineering her future with building blocks no one else could see. Standing apart, and yet quietly joined by their journeys, each of them discovered that the most impactful transformations had never demanded fanfare. Destiny, once chased with clenched resolve, became something akin to an orchard cultivated not by force, but by steady hands trusting rain to return in its season. A single word heard at dusk, an overlooked detail catching late sunlight, a moment of genuine laughter, all contributed to this inner architecture, brick by invisible brick. Security grew not as a wall, but as an expansive ground, solid, yielding, persistent. Those listening tonight might wonder what it feels like when realignment occurs. Perhaps it is not thunderous revelation, but a low, grounding resonance. certainty resurfacing with the dawn, a readiness to make choices benefiting well-being without second-guessing. As Elisa, Manuel, and Julia headed toward rest, none could recall the lesson's delivery, but each detected its imprint in their composure, in the way anticipation softened, in their newfound willingness to trust the next step. For anyone finding themselves within these words, the possibility remains open. One need not force growth or solace. Quiet repetition, welcomed with calm, can change everything while you dream. Sleep, then, as if wealth and ease are already rooting themselves deep within, blossoming hour by hour. By morning, you may carry that newfound center into waking life, not as something learned, but as something you now simply are. That, perhaps, is the greatest inheritance the night can offer, a silent apprenticeship yielding real riches, one restive heart at a time.